Hey YouTube, this is Rob L. Today I'm coming at you with my favorite greatest hits albums of all time. Now, greatest hits albums can be hit or miss because they miss a lot of great songs, they often only have songs that were hit singles, and they often miss a lot of deeper cuts that are also great songs. Now, I do have other greatest hits albums that I don't include here because, again, these are my favorites that I own, but in addition, there are certain bands where I think that their greatest hits albums maybe just miss too much of their best work in my opinion. So, for example, you're not going to see Def Leppard here because I would recommend just going out and buying Pyromania and Hysteria, which I think are their two greatest albums. You're also not going to see Whitesnake on here because I would recommend just going out and buying 1987 Whitesnake and Slip of the Tongue from 1989. You're also not going to see Guns N' Roses because I would recommend just buying Appetite for Destruction and Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 and Patience. And finally, you're not going to see Van Halen because I don't think their greatest hits album does them justice. Oh, and one more thing, these albums are not really in any particular order. So the first greatest hits here is a double CD set from Iron Maiden. Now I know this will be sacrilege to many Iron Maiden fans, but if you're a casual fan like I am, I think this is a pretty good cross-section of their songs. And if I'm not mistaken, the songs on these two CDs were actually chosen by fans on their website. Obviously, if you're a huge Iron Maiden fan, you're going to have a copy of every album they ever put out. Okay, the next greatest hits here is David Lee Roth's The Best. Now, I do have his album Skyscraper on CD, but I think his greatest hits is a pretty good cross-section of his solo work after Van Halen. The next greatest hits is Toto's Past to Present, 1977 to 1990. Steve Lukather, obviously an incredible guitar player. There are some classic songs on this greatest hits. Next greatest hits, Poison's greatest hits. Has a lot of great songs on it, probably a really good cross-section of their work. I don't own any of their albums individually, just a lot of fun. Okay, the next greatest hits is The Very Best of Dokken. Dokken, one of the great 80s hair bands. George Lynch, an incredible guitar player. I actually met him once at NAMM several years back. I don't own any of their albums individually, but I do think this is a really good cross-section of their music. The next album here is Cinderella, Rocked, Wired, and Bluesed, the greatest hits. Now I have to admit I've never owned any of their albums individually, but I do think that this greatest hits is a fantastic album. I think Cinderella is a really underrated 80s rock band. I think they got lumped together with all the hair bands in the 80s because of the first few videos that they had, but they really are more of a blues and hard rock band. Okay, the next greatest hits album, Ratt, 81 to 91. Back in the day, I actually had Ratts Out of the Cellar on tape. Another underrated 80s rock band in my opinion. Warren DeMartini is one of my favorite guitar players of all time. I think this greatest hits album does a really good job of representing their best songs. So the next greatest hits album here, I'm kind of cheating. I'm actually including two different greatest hits CDs. Stevie Ray Vaughan Greatest Hits 1 and Stevie Ray Vaughan Greatest Hits 2. Now, I'm a huge Stevie Ray Vaughan fan. I have every single one of his albums on CD, but I do think that these two greatest hits albums give you a pretty good cross-section of what he was all about. And if somebody wanted to know what his music was like, I would recommend getting these two CDs and then getting further into the catalog. Next greatest hits, Bryan Adams' So Far So Good. Bryan Adams is actually one of the best live performers I've ever seen, and I've seen him several times. I've seen him with a band, and I've seen him solo just with an acoustic guitar. I think he's a really highly underrated artist, and he's amazing live. I think this is a really strong greatest hits album. Every song on it is great. The next album here is Bon Jovi's Crossroads. Now, I own several Bon Jovi albums, and if you're just going to get one Bon Jovi album, in my opinion, you have to get Slippery When Wet. I think it's their best album, and most of their famous songs are going to be from that album. But every song on Crossroads is great. The only song that's not included that I wish they did is Never Say Goodbye from Slippery When Wet. It's my favorite sappy ballad song of all time. Next album, Motley Crue's Decade of Decadence, 81 to 91. Every song on here is classic Crue, and I think it's a really good cross-section of all of their albums. Next greatest hits album is Ozzy Osbourne's The Ozman Cometh. Now I do own Ozzy's first several albums, but I think this greatest hits is a really good cross-section of all of his work, from Randy Rhoads to Zakk Wylde. Okay, second to last of my favorite greatest hits albums, Led Zeppelin's Mothership. It's a double CD greatest hits. The first CD has 13 songs and the second disc has 11. Now obviously if you're a huge Zeppelin fan, you're going to have every CD they ever put out. You're either going to have them individually or you're going to have the box sets. But I think this double CD set is a really good representation of all of their work. A lot of great songs on here, and again, a very good cross-section of what they're all about. Okay, and the final greatest hits album on this list is Journey's Greatest Hits. Now, Journey's had a long career, they have a lot of albums and a lot of great songs, but I think this greatest hits really captures the best of everything. I think it's a great album to own, whether you're a huge fan of Journey or even just a casual fan. Every song on this album is fantastic, probably one of my favorite greatest hits albums. Okay, so that's a list of my favorite greatest hits albums that I own. As always, I'd love to see some of yours in the comment section. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you like my channel, please subscribe, and I'll be back soon. Thanks.